This is a small instructional video for an Arcade Blaster accessories pack. First we're going to start by having a look at the actual cartridge itself, making sure that power's on, syncs with our monitor and has controls. Now we don't need our controls just yet, we just want to focus on what we get with the cartridge, which is the main cartridge, the video cable which is HDMI to VGA, then you've got the power supply for the cartridge and then a little audio cable. So the first thing that I want to do is plug in the HDMI into the back of the cartridge and then plug that into my VGA monitor. Okay. Then I want to get the power supply for the cartridge and plug that in. Plug that into power and turn that on. Now in a moment that's going to load up. We'll get to this cable in a second. Okay, so that's loading up now. So we'll leave that for a second. Let's go over to our jammer harness. Basically how this works is that the cartridge has two sides of pins, the top side and the bottom side. And if you look at the jammer harness that you get with it, you've got the top side controls and then the bottom side controls. And somewhere around pin 16, you've got coin 1, start, up, down, left, right. And so if you look at the cartridge, you look at the jammer harness, which gets plugged in this direction. So you've got the looped earth, the power on the left side of the cartridge. That's how that would connect. So that's the top side and that's the bottom side. So pretty much starting at pin 16, we'll count along the way. Pin 16 is coin, then the brown one is start, and so forth and so on. Now, the cartridge is loaded up and we get presented with this main screen. And the first thing that I want to do is I just want to check that the cartridge is working in its controls. And the way that I do this is on this menu here, I can go left and right. And left and right, if we look at the jammer harness, is pins 20 and 21 for the top side. So what I do is I get this audio cable and I just want to use this quickly as a small little test, right? So I want to hold this down on pin number 1, hold one end down on pin number 1, and then I want to start tapping on pin 20 and 21, like so. And as I do that, you'll see the menu going across, right? That basically tells me that the cartridge is powered up, it syncs with my monitor, the controls are working. And now I start connecting it to all my accessories. So I'm just going to turn this off for a second because we know that's working. Now, the last thing that I want to do with this audio cable is plug it where we need to plug it. So that's one side goes into the audio port of the adapter and the other side goes back into the cartridge, like so. Okay. So now we're going to go back to our jammer harness. And what we want to do is we want to separate player 1's controls from player 2's controls, just to make it a lot easier for us to set up. And we find that we're stuck with this big harness and we want to separate it out. And the first thing that we want to get out of here is, it's a bit of a jungle of wires, and we want to get the ground wires. So we want to get that out. Okay, so that's all our grounds. Now, we want to lay this all out, and what we're going to have to do is do a fast forward frame on this in a moment. But basically, like we said, it connects into the cartridge that way. So your top layer of rows is player 1, your bottom layer of rows is player 2, and we basically want to separate all these out. So this wire, and I would grab all that. Okay, It's actually already separated out, so this is going to be a bunch, and then we've got another bunch here. Okay, and our ground. Okay. So, this set of wires, this is for our speakers. We'll deal with this later on. But what you want to do is you want to put all the rubber terminals over the terminal so that nothing is touching together, and leave that aside. And we don't know whether this is player 1 or player 2 yet, but we'll figure that out in a second. Now the other thing that we want to do is, again, just put all the little rubber tips over the terminals so that we don't have wires touching other wires. Okay, and then this one here. Okay, now what we want to do is return back our cartridge. We plug in the jammer harness, like so. And then basically how it works is every button has a switch. The switches have 3 terminals, here, here, and here. We're interested in the top one here, which is the common earth, or the common ground, and the one that's closest to it, right? So I'm gonna bend this one out of here, and we're mainly focused in this one and this one. And the way this sits is, you would take that off, put that into position, screw that back on, tighten it up, then you get your switch and you plug that in. So, like so. Okay, now I'll do another one. And again, I'm only interested in the top, the one closest to it, and I'm just going to move that one out of the way. Okay, now an arcade machine is wired up as such that you'll have an active wire or a colored wire, and then you'll have a ground wire, which is the black. Now the ground wires will be daisy chained, which basically means that they'll go from one to another to another. And that's why we have this lot here, which goes from one pin to another pin to another pin, and it'll just keep on going around your whole arcade machine. And the other one is for the active, which is for the colored wire, which we're going to get in a second. Now, how do we know of my 2 sets of controls here, which one is player 1 and which one is player 2? Well, basically, we're going to do a similar sort of thing, whereby we're going to look at pins 20 or 21, which in this case it's yellow, right? And we're going to find that in our sets of wires, we've got 1 yellow. So we want to grab this terminal, and I want to pull that rubber back a little bit, make it touch one of these ground wires, and if nothing happens, then we know this is likely player 2 side. So we don't want that just yet. So let's take our other set of wires, and we want the yellow wire, pull it back, earth that out, and you can see that on the screen something is moving. So that tells me that this whole entire section here is my player 1 set of controls. This is my player 2 set of controls. Now, it's pretty easy. I just follow the color and I run it to the particular pin. So, for example, this is the player 1, which is the brown wire. So I'm going to take the brown wire, plug that in. Then I'll take one of my grounds, plug that in, and then when I press the button, you'll see on the screen something will happen. Okay, so we know that works. Now we'll move on, and then we pretty much go through all of our different options, up, down, left, right on a joystick. You'll know which one it is because it's the, so basically if the joystick's this way and I'm going up, I just look around and I can see that it's the bottom right switch that's being touched. So move this one out of the way. So my up wire goes here, the ground wire goes here, and it keeps on going. And that's basically how we set up our controls. Now the last thing that we want to do is we just want to test our sound. So what I can do is I can start a game. So I'm just going to start this random game. I grab my set of speaker wires, and what you'll find here is you've got two sets of whites, and they go to pin 10 here. We've got a positive terminal for one speaker, a positive terminal for another speaker, and then the negative terminals for that. So if I test this sound, I'm just going to turn the volume up on the side of the cartridge, which is just around the side here. Right, so I'm going to turn that up. And how this works is I touch the positive to the positive, negative to the negative, and I know that there's sound. Okay? Pretty much from here, you just go through one by one, you know, individually plugging each wire. What I like to do is I like to plug in a few. I like to just do a few tests. At every single point, I like to do a few tests. That's in case anything goes wrong, I know that it's just within the last steps that I've done. If you've got any questions, just shoot us an email. Happy to help. But otherwise, I think that's about it.